Welcome to another episode of the Family is the Answer podcast. My name is Chrina, and I get to work with our amazing team here at Rohe Foundation. And joining me today is Tanya Paraso, who I'm super excited to have back on the podcast with us. Many of you had the privilege of meeting Tanya. Was it a year ago?
Yeah. I was still in college.
Just about a year ago, she was still in college and she was interning with us. I'll never forget the first day I met Tanya. So the first day I met Tanya, she helped us with, a huge event that we did in partnership with IJM. And after that, I remember telling John, my husband, I said, oh my goodness, I really hope we can hire this girl someday. Like, I really hope we get to work with Tanya. Hey, fast forward 2022, Tanya has said yes to us, joining us full time. And we're super excited. She is now the manager for communities and events for our team. And she's doing just amazing work with the different communities that we manage. For those that are, hopping onto our podcast for the very first time, maybe you can tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So fun fact, maybe I was homeschooled. So in terms of like family being the answer, a little plug there. I think that's been really real for me because I really spent a lot of time with my family, and I think that has really played a big part in why I chose something that's related to people and valuing relationships. I've also really been very active with the youth in our youth ministry and disciple 7 women, and it's so humbling. And I think that that's really prepared me for the work that we do now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's just really nice to see you, who even, whatever capacity you had, either as a student, in the ministries that you're involved with, even in your family, really taking on such responsibility and leadership and stewarding whatever God puts in front of you so well. Just seeing you take on such leadership roles, just really having a lot of respect for you and seeing how you steward things really well. So thank you for doing what you do for us. We have invited you onto the podcast today, kind of ambushed you, not gonna lie.
Kind of.
Because I really wanted to get her to talk about communities when it comes to the value of that around foster care, around, adoption. Communities are so important. And we're finding now that a lot of people are reaching out to us on Facebook, on our social media platforms, and they're saying, like, trying to get into some Facebook pages and groups and really wanting to connect. So you're doing great work there. So maybe you could take us through, maybe like give us an overview. I know it's just several weeks since you started, and you've just done such a great job, as I said, stewarding that from the start. Why are communities so important for those who are involved in fostering and adoption?
I think I want to zoom into why, just in general, it's important. So in the Philippines, we really have this collectivistic culture, which I think is a bit difficult these days with, struggling with certain things and just feeling alone. So it's a bit hard to live that out, I'd say. It's a culture, but I feel like a lot of people don't really even value it anymore. Like personally, they're like, oh yeah, I grew up in a close-knitted family, but for it to be important to me, having a community and not feeling alone or offering that to someone is not really something that comes so naturally. I feel like everyone's just overwhelmed with their own personal struggles that they don't see the importance to, extend presence to someone else. Community is just so important to an individual's life. And if you zoom that in to fostering and adopting, that's a whole nother level of like challenges. I've not personally adopted or fostered yet, but I've learned so much about it that I can't even imagine having to, like even as youth, you get overwhelmed. Like, should I do that? Can I even, like, that's a lot. And so when you're actually nearing that stage of considering it, with your spouse or just as an individual, I can only imagine what more amount of things that's just running in your head of reasons for probably why you shouldn't do it. We like to weigh things and should I do it, should I not? And probably when it comes to fostering and adopting, there would be so much reasons why not to do it. It's not practical. It's not, it's a long process, so many things. But when you actually have someone walking alongside you on that road of like that rockiness and that, you're I pictured this something like on the way here, how we're not really from Makati where our office is now. So I was with my dad and we were using Waze, and I was just like, this is hard because like ways is like confusing,
Yeah.
and you don't really know
And
where
there
to
are
go.
one-way streets and
Yes,
they're
here
like,
on Makati. Oh my gulay.
yeah,
If you miss a turn, then
it's like a
turn.
big, yeah, a
Yeah.
big detour.
Yeah, but what made it I mean, like, we'd probably still be lost, but what made it different is that I had my dad with me. Like, someone to struggle with me, that it wasn't, hey, I know better than you. It was
Yeah,
like, I'm
let's
with
figure
you
it
in
out
this. Yeah,
together.
let's get to our destination together. And it's someone that you trusted and that you love
Yeah.
and that loves you.
Right.
So I think everyone needs that.
Yeah, that's a really great analogy. Just journeying together and the importance around that. You hit the nail on the head when you said there's so many fears and there can be a lot of anxiety, and foster care and adoption in itself, there's just a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, I find that, in our forums, which you also manage, we get a lot of questions, and unfortunately, sometimes our answer to them is it's case to case basis or it depends, and that can be frustrating, but it's just the reality around adoption and fostering. There's a lot of uncertainties.
Yeah.
But it really helps to journey with someone. In fact, when it comes to our forums, what people love the most is the stories, so the panels. Like every time we invite a guest, right?
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, that was my favorite part
Yeah.
of the forum because they got to hear and learn from real life experiences." But I also want to circle back to what you were saying about keeping to yourselves. Families just worrying about their own needs and the own things that they're going through, and I also find that Filipino families, maybe Asian families, don't realize they need community sometimes because they're very private.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like our family issues are our family issues. Like we don't tell anybody about what's going on in our family and our challenges and our struggles, and they tend to keep a lot of that to themselves. Would you find that that's true, like in our communities as well?
Yeah, I think it carries over. Even, I mean, like, if you're raised in that kind of culture, or if you thought that that was probably the way to go, it's a bit hard to outgrow that, even if you're in a
Right.
community that says, no, you can be yourself here, that we're with you, you're not alone, you don't need to process that alone. So I think it's really a cultural thing that we're trying to outgrow, the importance of community. But yeah, you're so right in that. I think it's the saving face also.
We care a lot about how we're perceived.
Yes,
I think
yeah.
humans in general, I can imagine how this could be especially challenging for an adoptee
Yeah.
that maybe wanted to talk about their experiences, but didn't feel like it was safe to do that because they were worried or concerned about how that would reflect on their parents or on their family and things like that.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important also for especially adoptees to learn the more healthy way to talk about them also being adopted, right?
Right.
Because that for to break that stigma that I have to save the reputation of my parents. Really, it starts with the parents, because the child wouldn't know that they don't need to worry about that if the parent never even set that culture that, you're adopted and it's not something to be ashamed of. It's not something that makes you an outcast.
Right.
So then if they already experience that at home, then they could embrace that and talk about it even proudly in their communities and their schools and say, I'm adopted. And no matter what you say, that doesn't change what my parents said I am, which is loved and cared for and chosen.
Right.
That I was chosen. That's something I don't think someone can figure out on their own.
Right. And this is the power of community. I think some of the things that you're talking about, Tanya, are things we've learned from the experiences of other families, whether they're moms, adoptive dads, or adoptees themselves, being able to actually really learn what's happening and what helps and what doesn't help.
Yeah.
And what the challenges are. And I think that's really the value of community. It's the learning. You mentioned that the needs are very different depending on which community we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. It's so unique. And I think that that's also comforting to know that it's so unique, because like what moms, adoptive and foster moms, are struggling with is not something probably adoptive and foster dads are struggling with. Maybe there's similarities, but it's also very unique. And that's why we try to really gather them by moms community. We don't really do couples community just yet. Maybe we could do that.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Parents.
Parents. And we do have some equipping programs that help adoptive and foster moms and dads. But really, what we're trying to establish is communities for moms, communities for dads, communities for adoptees and foster kids, it's really to their specific need, because we acknowledge that the stories shared there are stories someone else needs to hear in that same season, or approaching that season, or maybe even done with that season.
Sure.
It's different points of your life and the lessons that you've learned, being able to share that with someone who has probably been racking their brain about, how am I gonna do this? I'm so afraid. I feel so alone and so unequipped.
Right.
And I don't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very insightful in that you touched it. There are different seasons in a person's life. And whether you've been through it, sometimes people think like, oh no, I'm good, but not recognizing that there's value in engaging with community because you've passed that, or because you've walked through it. It puts you in the position where you actually have so much to give.
Yeah.
When I find myself in conversation with some families, they'll be like, oh, no, actually, I'm good. I actually don't need community. I know
Yeah.
that sounds silly. Like, I'm fine. We're
But
good. We're
very
settled.
familiar.
Like, but you kind of, have to circle back to them and say like, hey, but that actually puts you in the very unique position of being able to walk through this
Yeah.
with other people who are in desperate need of
Mhm.
mentoring, of coaching, of learning how to navigate this very unique situation they're in. And I think that it's important that we recognize that when it comes to fostering and adopting, this is not something that's widely talked about in the Philippines yet. So here for Filipino families, I can't stress enough the importance of this. There are a lot of resources, and I've found myself turning to a lot of them simply because there was a shortage of it that was contextualized to Filipino adoptions and Philippine-based foster care and all of that. But having to look overseas to see, what's out there in the US, in Europe, and in Australia and other parts of Asia, how are they doing it? What does it look like, right? But that's why community is important, because there's some things that just don't apply.
Yeah.
Like the process, the journey, the technicalities of it, or the cultural nuances of what we experience, and being able to contextualize that really only happens in our local communities. And so I think there's just so much value there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think you hit that spot on. It's again unique for each culture and each family, because like you were saying, you were turning to so many sources that the internet is just a vast thing, that yes, it really gives you a lot of information and probably some testimonials, but it's different when you hear it from someone and is giving their time to tell you that it's not as hard as it seems. Like it's manageable and it's so worthwhile to actually hear that and see that and talk to someone, look at them in the eye and say, hey, I understand that you're struggling and that you're afraid to adopt and foster, but that it's going to be okay because I went through that. Like what you were saying a while ago, maybe you're not struggling in you're seasoned, I guess, in a sense, in adopting and fostering, because you've just gotten stronger, or wiser in handling all of these things. But how beautiful it is when you actually use what you've learned to another generation of parents.
That's right.
To another generation of adoptees. And it's not just those who have already learned a lot, or but those who are learning and can impart. It's just so many things. I was talking to one of the members of our adoptees community, and she was sharing how now that she's a mom already now, but she was adopted, and she was sharing just the beauty of how, because she was shown love and care despite not being connected by blood, it's helped her to show that same unconditional love and care to her own biological child.
Right.
And to also show her child the beauty of it's actually possible to have a good story of adoption. And that when her child grows up and goes to their school, they can say, my mom was adopted, and it's nothing bad. It's nothing shameful. It's something so beautiful and powerful because I've experienced that generational love from my grandmother and my grandfather to my mom and then to me, and now I can show it to you, someone who was fostered or adopted. Like that's powerful. That's generations, just because someone chose to love and care unconditionally, not bound by blood.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I think those are stories that we hear really often coming out of our community gatherings. I mean, that's one of so many, right? And just understanding the ripple effect of it, and just being able to stand with each other. But like we were reading up on basically community empowerment, and the Archibald Project has a lot of information about this, but they've kind of defined it as Community empowerment really helps create an environment of increasing stability and layers of protection and support for
Mm.
children and families. And I really like how they phrase that, because those layers of stability
Yeah.
and support and protection, I mean, that's so important when you're
Mm.
going through something so uncertain. They also say a strong community will support families in crisis to ensure they receive the support needed to properly care for their children. And I get that, because especially around foster care,
Mm.
where like it could be a little bit more sometimes transitional,
Yeah.
the need for community is so great. You cannot embark on this alone. I was listening to a podcast recently. It was Jed Medifend. He is the president of CAFO, the Christian Alliance for Orphans, and he does a podcast, which I highly recommend, Justice in the Inner Life. Super hooked on this podcast now. But he was talking about how biblically, every time God would send out the disciples, he would send them out two by two. He just wouldn't send them out into new experiences on their own. And I think it's so important that we think about that in the context of fostering and adoption. Don't get into this alone. You know what I mean? Like, you need people and your community around you to stand with you, to walk with you, to hold the nets for you when things get hard, because they will, when there are challenges, because there will be, not because it's adopting and fostering, but because it's parenting, because it's building family, because it's worth it. And anything worth doing is hard.
Yeah.
Just as you talk about the importance of community, I think bringing it back to that, this is worth doing together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know for us, and the work that we do around, the Families the Answer podcast, Stronger Generations, which is designed to really equip families as well. We so believe in making our communities a safe place. I think every time we start a community meeting, one of the things that I hope would set our communities apart is that we walk into those spaces, setting the grounds, setting the groundwork, the ground rules, and saying, guys, this is meant to be a sacred place for people to share their struggles, to share their thoughts, to share, their challenges, what it is that they're going through, candidly, without judgment, without anyone reacting, or without fear of being criticized or misunderstood, but it just being a safe place for people. And so with that, I really want you to maybe just give us an overview of what the different communities look like for us at Rohe Foundation. We've launched a couple of them. Some of, like the moms community has been going for a long time. Maybe you can just give us an overview of what's happening in those communities, what the gatherings are looking like, what the opportunities are for people who are listening to get involved in what we're doing and how we're gathering people together.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ate Chrina. It's my honor to talk about all of our communities. There's so many communities that we're trying to establish and continue to just care for. Yeah, we did have a mom's gathering, so that was something that we tried to do again after quite some time with our moms. We had it a few weeks ago, and that was just so refreshing. That was my first mom's gathering, even if I'm not a mom.
It was so good to have you there.
Yeah. And it was just so amazing, and just hearing, like, we didn't even really do much, did we, Krina? Like, we just gave them a space and they just started sharing and encouraging each other, speaking truth and life to each other's, circumstance, that hey, I'm 20 years into my journey, and then someone who's just starting, because we also invited potential or prospective adoptive parents.
Right.
So that exchange was, I feel like that's the highlight for me. Seeing a mom who is at her, the point of matching in the process of adoption, and then having a mom who is a mom of a 20-year-old, or I don't know, a 30-year-old.
Right.
And them talking to each other and saying, hey, I remember when I was in that, in the matching process. That's hard. That's difficult.
Yeah.
But we made it through, and here's some things that helped me, and like here's some resources that helped me, and then like just that exchange of ideas. And I think that's something you can't find on the internet or alone. So that's one for our mom's gathering, or our mom's community. We have gatherings. We're trying to launch also our dad's community, because there's been like this really big wave of requests. I think when we promoted the mom's community, all the dads are like, hey, what about us? We need community too, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
Because you think usually for dads in general, they usually are more, maybe preoccupied in providing for the family, maybe. But it's just so great to hear also that they see the value of it, and that they're ready. They want to be part of one, and we're gonna launch that soon. So we're getting in
look out
contact.
for that.
yeah, we're getting in contact with the dads community to have gatherings for them also. And then also we did have a homegrown adoptees community. So homegrown is what we call
Ooh.
our adoptees, our fostered kids. And we met up with the core just last week on site. That was so refreshing. Meeting them on site and just having coffee together and cookies. That was good. Sorry,
Wow.
I had to mention that.
Why wasn't I invited to this meeting?
Yeah, but and just exchanging ideas of what they want the community to look like. So I think that that's the
Right.
beauty of it, is that we don't tell them, hey, do this, do that, like this could work for you, this could not. It's
Right.
really them that are telling us, I want to do this, I want to change this in the community, and let's do this. So it's really us just empowering our moms, our dads, and our adoptees communities to really gather together and share ideas and be that support for one another. We just create that space, but really it's them led, the community led.
Yeah.
And what was so great about that time with the core actually was, I was talking again to one of the core members, and she was saying, like, she had this idea. She's like, you know what, Tanya, I really want to do this project, or I want to really do this culture where adoptees talk to those that are already considering, or
Ooh.
maybe in the process of their adoption or foster journey. Maybe they're processing the papers or even considering it. For her, she wants to tell her story to someone that is probably full of just their fears,
Yeah.
and the overwhelming amount of documents they need to prepare, and say,
Yes.
it's worth it. Like, I am a walking testament of how worth it your decision is. And yeah, so we also have that community, those that are considering or in the process of adoption. We want to support them also and show them that it's worth it. And we also have our volunteers.
Okay, before you go into that,
Okay.
I also wanted to chime in a little bit about the different communities that you mentioned. Obviously, the dads one, we're super excited about that because I think fathers play such a critical role in the adoption and foster care journey and dynamic in the home. And we really are looking for dads who would like to be part of that community and really help us maybe lead that. Mostly because I'm not a dad and neither are you. And we could use a little help, but very excited about that. So that's kind of like an upcoming thing. The moms community, I can touch on a little bit more because, we do both on-site events and online ones, which have been really cool. I know we recently tried to we took a break from our on-site ones, and it's either a book study or it's something that we do together. But we really want to encourage families, just like the adoptees community. I think there is so much value in like really literally gathering together and being together and taking what we know as communities online to really real community, right? I know that sounds funny, but communities where we can actually gather together and be together and share experiences and come around each other. So I think there's value in that too. But definitely really wanted to put out there that we do both, the online events for moms and also the actual gatherings where we come together and really support each other and hear each other's stories and sometimes study a book together and do things like that, right? But what I wanted to bring up was the value in, yes, I just realized now, we've designed these communities to kind of be a space where we could learn from each other. So one of the things you were telling me earlier was that you find that for parents, for adoptive parents, it's really more the equipping side, right? You were saying kind of the need is they want to be able to learn how to parent well.
Yeah.
Learn how to be intentional and mindful of the fact that their child came to them through adoption or foster care and do that well and really be able to have a flourishing relationship and dynamic at home. But when it comes to adoptees, it's really more, really wanting to be heard and to know they're not alone and that their experiences are sometimes not unique to them. Sometimes they are unique to them, but knowing that they're in it together, that there are people who have journeyed a similar path as them, right? Am I right in saying that? Like, the needs being a little bit different.
Yeah, definitely. Especially for like adoptees, some of them don't have, the most ideal story.
Yes.
Of how they were told that they were adopted,
Right.
or fostered. Thankfully, we've just had so many advocates say the beauty of how they, their adoption telling stories and their journeys of how they were loved and cared for, regardless. But there are so many out there, maybe even those that might be listening to this podcast, that say, I was adopted, I was fostered, I didn't have that great of an experience that you guys have been talking about through your social media posts and all your events. And I think it's very helpful to just give them that space and that they can say, I didn't have a good story, but can you listen to me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me out? Can you tell me how I can grow from here?
Right.
Despite having had that past, how is that not going to, define my future or my present?
Right. I love that you said that because I think now I just want to talk to all the adoptees that are listening and that maybe this podcast caught your attention because you thought maybe you're looking for someone that you could connect with. It's so important for us as an organization that advocates for adoption to recognize that there are adoptees who have not had a good experience with this.
Yeah.
Maybe their parents didn't have community to walk through these things with, didn't know where to ask the questions, didn't know who to turn to for counsel and advice on how to do this right and how to make the most out of what they were given at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just wasn't really talked about a few years ago. Just
Mm.
very recently only did we start talking about adoption and foster care in this way. And so I just want, for the adoptees that are listening, if you're saying and you're listening and you're saying, I didn't really have a great experience, or mine was terrible. Like everything you guys are talking to on social media, like I can't relate with that. Well, you know what? That's what homegrown, the adoptees community is really for. It's not just celebrate how awesome their adoption was.
Yeah.
But it's to walk together and to say, some of us have not had a great story, but we want to hear you and we want to give you the space to meet people like you that maybe can help you make sense of some of the things that have happened to you and some of the things in your journey that maybe you deserved but didn't get. I mean, we want to be able to say, this is a safe place for you to share with us and with the community some of the things that have really happened to you without having to fear that it's going to reflect that on your parents or what they might think if they found out. And so really just a safe place. So please do, if reach out to us with that. The other thing I wanted to say is eventually the goal is really, once we're able to establish these communities, our goal is really to bring these communities together.
Yeah.
Because I know you mentioned someone from the homegrown community meeting that you were at kind of said like, oh, I would really love to talk to the prospective adoptive parents.
Yeah.
I think it's so important that actually the experiences of the adoptees are communicated to the experience, like to the moms and the dads, and we're able to share those experiences safely so that we can learn from each other, so we can figure out really how to do this as best as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's just the beauty of being able to have these gatherings, opportunities to learn from each other, to be equipped from each other's experiences. And that's why it's so important for us to create a safe place for our communities, because we really want it to lead to meaningful change and to help us meaningfully build families in a way that is mutually beneficial, not just to the adopters, but also to the adoptee. Yeah, I just wanted to say that. I know we're going to go into talking a little bit about another community, which might be outside of that space of families, right? But you do manage other communities for those that might not be actually in the adoption circles and foster care circles.
Yeah. I remember what you were sharing a while ago, Chrina, about just journeying. And again, another analogy. I like thinking about things in a visual kind of thing.
I love it.
So I think it's a book. I'm not sure where I heard this, but it was my dad or mom who told me about the analogy of hand me another brick. So basically, it's someone really trying to build a house or let's say a building. But obviously, you can't say hand me another brick to no one. Like you need someone there with you to build something. Like you can't just keep putting the bricks on your own and trying to build whatever this is that you're passionate about. It's gonna drain you out. It's tiring to feel that you're the only one pioneering for this thing. And that's where our volunteers come in. They're the ones that hand each other bricks to build and support our adoption community. And everything that we're trying to achieve, all of our advocacy, even our child placing agency, all the work that we do, our volunteers are just cheering us on and helping us do that, handing us another brick to build something that would change generations, that would bring healing in this generational cycle of probably hurt and neglect and abandonment, to change that and bring healing. It's our volunteers that also help us in that. And I speak from experience because I was a volunteer and an intern. So yeah, that I think that's why we also value so much that community, our volunteers and interns. Actually, I just came from a meeting a while ago with our interns.
Oh.
Three of amazing individuals. Hello, shout out.
Ooh.
From a college that we partnered with. So we have partnerships like that also. And they were just giving me so many ideas of we could do this, for the pregnant women in crisis. Let's do this. Let's
Wow.
have this campaign for them. Let's go onto this platform and just, bring awareness that we are also helping pregnant women in crisis who just feel also alone. How encouraging and powerful would that be for a mom who's struggling to know that there are college students that are trying to
Yeah.
bring voice to what she's going through or speak up for them? I think that that's something that we don't know that is happening behind the scenes
Right.
through our volunteers and interns because they do a lot of the behind the scenes. But I want to bring that awareness that we also have that community.
They're so critical to the work that we do. I think a lot of times we get asked, like, oh, I didn't realize, like, you weren't a very big team. You guys are able to do so much. How have you established good presence on social media and through your Facebook page and all of that? And they don't realize we have like an army of volunteers and interns, and they really do pull the ropes with us. And there's community for them. I love when I get around them. They're super excited about it. Usually in our events, whenever we do on ground events, I find they come to me and they're like, hey, Ate Chrina, like, I just wanted to tell you, like, my friend, she's adopted and this is her story. And then somebody else will tell me, oh yeah, I just wanted to let you know, like, my neighbor's really excited. They're starting their adoption journey. And I'm hearing all these stories and I realize that we're not alone, that the work that happens and the impact of the work that we do as an organization is very limited, if not for our volunteers and our interns who really advocate for us.
Yeah.
And, we even have people across the shores who advocate for us and who talk about our work and help us do what we're doing here in the Philippines. It's possible because of many partners in other parts of the world and outside of our office that mobilize the work that we do. And we have communities for them as well. I think it's just great that we provide those opportunities. So I know that we've gone through a lot and we've talked a lot about the communities that we have currently. I just want to, maybe this is just an invitation, Tanya, for those that are saying, that sounds really exciting. I fit into one of those categories that you mentioned. I'm currently an adoptive or foster mom, or an adoptive or foster dad, an adoptee or prospective adoptive family. And also, I do want to put out there in the adoption space that this is not limited to those families that are journeying with us through our child placement agency. I mean, absolutely not. Like, we invite everyone, regardless of what agency you walk through your adoption application with or fostering license with. Everyone is welcome, whether you work with your local government or the DSWD. You went through court, didn't go through court. Everybody's whether it was a simulated adoption, I mean, an independent placement, whatever the nature of your adoption or your foster care setup, you're welcome here. So maybe, Tanya, as well, you could just let everybody know how they could get in touch with us and how they could connect to get more information about the communities and the events that we have going.
Yeah, I'm so excited to share with people how they can, like, the next step that they can do. So you've heard this entire podcast, you might be saying, hey, that's me. One of those is me. And I want to do something. I want to be a part of this and I don't want to be alone in it. Like, I want to be a part of it. Sometimes you want to be a part of this really big thing, but you're probably feeling alone in being a part of it. Like, maybe volunteers and interns, but we have a community. You're not alone in that also. And I just wanted to add on to what you were saying a while ago that I think I can speak for the entire staff and say how this work really is not easy. It's not easy. It's very emotionally, you really invest in the stories you hear, but how encouraging it is to know that we have these people that are willing to give their time also with us in the work that we do. And even if it's just 30 minutes, like Jana, the one who started, or staff member who started out transcribing for 30 minutes, even if it's just that is
Who never left.
Never left. I work with her every day
today.
She's
producing our podcast.
she's hiding in the booth there. But like her story, just 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's valuable, and that you don't know how encouraging that is to us staff.
Right.
And what we do, to know that there are people who would be willing to give their time, whatever they can give, to help in the work that we're doing together.
Yeah.
So yeah, how can you start? How can you get involved? just visit our website. It's simple, roheifoundation.org. And there you can see if you want to volunteer, if you want to share your story, if you want to be part of the community, just let us know there. We're dying to know who you are. I hope that you don't just listen to this and say, hey, that was nice. But actually,
Do it now.
yeah.
Message us now.
Message us and
Would social media be an option as well? Maybe, right? Like our
Yeah.
Facebook page or our Instagram, if that's something that you're on. I know maybe for some of the adoptees as well, connecting with us on social media might be simpler. Whatever works for you, please reach out to us or reach out to one of our staff. You can reach out to me directly as well. And I've really enjoyed it. I've gotten a few direct messages from moms saying like, hi, I'd really like to join the moms community. Like, what do you guys have going on? And you guys can do that. Sound good? All right, guys. Well, I think that concludes this episode of the Family is the Answer podcast. Again, if you need more information on how to adopt or get licensed to be a foster family here in the Philippines, we are here to serve you. You can connect with us through our website, roheifoundation.org. We'd be happy to connect with you there. And if you have any questions or comments about the podcast, let us know. We would love your feedback. Or if you're listening and you want to get involved in communities or you want to share a story on our podcast, we would absolutely love to have you. So please do reach out to us. But I guess that's it for now. So thanks again for joining us. And we look forward to catching you at our next episode. Bye for now.
Bye.